All right, back to it. So where I left off in the last video, I was talking about how the ankle is stabilized, right, at lockout. From here, the spine continues to remain neutral, as in the cervical spine is in line with the rest of the spine. We're not looking up like this and putting extra pressure on those cervical erectors, as well as even the thoracic erectors. I mean, it's all a chain reaction, right? So our upper traps and lats contract isometrically to stabilize the shoulders, keep them back rather than rounding forward and down. Cervical erectors, I already said that, keeps cervical spine neutral. And then your rectus abdominis, everything here in your core is continuing to isometrically contract and stabilize you upright. Your grip muscles, your carpal flexors, they are contracting isometrically and keeping the bar in your hand. Or again, they're eccentrically contracting if the bar's starting to slip. Hopefully it's not, right? Last, we're going to descend and replace. We're just going to reverse the process, right? Knees flex and hips hinge posteriorly. Your glutes, quads, and hamstrings are now eccentrically contracting whenever that happens. So whenever I say hip hinge, that means the hips, as you bend your knees, your hips, you get that slight knee flex and then your hips go back. You don't fold at your waist. You keep that core tight, right? Your grip continues to contract and isometrically to keep the bar in your hand. Upper, mid traps, rhomboids, all that fun stuff is isometrically contracting to keep the spine neutral and shoulders back. Lumbar spine contracts eccentrically whenever we're doing that hip hinge back, right? And then it's going to stabilize along with the rectus abdominis and obliques once we get the hip hinge back. Once we hip hinge, then we just descend, flex the knees fully again. And then the tibialis anterior is going to stabilize us, while the gastroc and the soleus are going to contract eccentrically to keep us from toppling over. And this is the completion of your max load deadlift. So real quick, some phases of rapid acceleration. First, we have lift off. This is where our quads and our glutes begin to extend our knee and break the bar off the ground. Torque has to be produced as we do that to overcome the weight of this object, the force pulling us down. So force is placed into the ground. Well, it's placed into the ground how? Through the efforts of your knee extensors and even your gastroc and your soleus as well. And this is going to help us break the ground off. And that is the first phase of that's where rapid acceleration begins, because we're going from, okay, maybe a little bit of isometric contraction getting our stance to boom, now we're hitting it. We're trying to get off the ground. At knee pass, now our hamstrings and lumbar erectors are going to really begin to kick in order to take us from here to hip extension, right? So that's where we're going to get some more rapid acceleration. It's going to bring our torso upright. So from more like this, like I said, to a more upright position as we bring the hips through. And then as we descend, obviously, as we descend, I say this is a phase of rapid acceleration because now as we reverse the process, all these things have to begin to eccentrically contract. So rather than, oh, boom, now we're contracting to lift it up. Now we're having to rapidly contract to keep just from, collapsing and slamming the bar on the ground and hurting ourselves. Eccentric contraction produces torque in the muscles in order to lower the bar in a controlled manner. So those are really where we see rapid acceleration. We don't see it much whenever we get to the top, maybe a little bit more again of the quads, as our quads, they flex our knee, and they also are connected to our hip, so they also flex our hip and they keep us from hyperextending and hurting ourselves at the top of the lift. But that and the tibialis, that's about it. Yep. So extreme joints, range of motion, where we're likely to get injured. Your lower back is at risk of injury throughout this lift, depending on where your bar placement is, changes your moment arm. If the knees extend and the hips rise parallel or above the shoulders, pressure is placed on the lumbar spine to create torque. Okay, that's this one. We're now moving to a straight leg deadlift instead of a actual deadlift. This changes the moment arm that runs from the axis back through the hips. It extends it, so therefore more force has to be produced, and it's going to be produced right here in your lower back, and you could really hurt yourself. At lockout, we have hyperextension of the spine that can lead to injury. So right here, if the shoulders are going too far back and our hips are going too far forward, that's going to potentially get your spine hurt. And if the bar is too far from your body, this puts extra stress on the lumbar and the thoracic spine. So right here, you don't want to be with this bar away from your shins. Again, not only does it affect your displacement and your velocity, it's also going to put that, it's going to change your moment arm again and lengthen from the hips. And then also these smaller muscles in your thoracic spine now have to contract even more. And then also right here, we don't want to, you'll see people, they'll bend their arms down. I've coached many athletes that they would bend their arms and then straighten them out to get the bar off the ground. Problem with that is you're putting yourself at risk of tearing everything in your elbow. If you want to have Tommy Johns, go for it. Yeah, because your radial ulnar or your humeral ulnar or your humeroradial joint are going to be injured. And then last but not least, our head placement. Like I said, this head placement, it puts our cervical and thoracic spine at risk of injury whenever your head is up. So this guy, maybe if we look at him from the side, it's not that bad, but from this angle, it looks like he's hardcore torquing his neck up, which means that those muscles are already experiencing tension, right? So if that's the case, then as he comes up and as his mid-trap, as his lats, as his rhomboids, all those muscles start to kick in to keep his shoulders back. This means that now we're putting extra pressure on those muscles because they're already shortened a little bit with the cervical erectors being shortened up here. It's a chain reaction, and vice versa. It's also likely to get our cervical erectors hurt. So we want to keep that head, instead of, our head looking up like this, keep it neutral. Look out 6 feet in front of you. That's an easy way to remember. And if you follow these principles, soon you can do a half-ton deadlift like Eddie Hall. Now you notice his hips go down to get a little bit of a load, but his hips are not that low whenever he starts his pull. And that's it. I hope this was helpful. Thank you all so much.